Tonight, awarded for peace as her country prepares for war. In hiding for months, Venezuela's opposition leader is being smuggled into Europe. Her daughter accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on her behalf. Coming up, the man who banned her from running for president is holding a rally for supporters. We'll bring you those images live. And in a significant escalation, Donald Trump says the US has seized an oil tanker off the Venezuelan coast. Could a ground invasion be next? Plus, the British soldier who died while watching a Ukrainian military test is named as Lance Corporal George Hooley. The evidence that Ukrainian children are being sent to North Korea as part of a Russian re-education program. And why these men were arrested by Afghanistan's morality police for dressing like characters from Peaky Blinders. It's all coming up on The World with me, Dominic Waghorn. Good evening. You may not have heard of her before now. Maria Corina Machado is the woman who beat Donald Trump to the Nobel Peace Prize. She's been in hiding for 18 months, fearing arrest by Venezuela's authoritarian leader. Now she's being smuggled into Europe to receive her award.
I'm on my way. As soon as I arrive, I will be able to embrace all my family and my children that I have not seen for 2 years.
But while Venezuela's opposition leader is being rewarded for promoting peace, her country could be on the brink of war. After months of US strikes on so-called drug boats and a build-up of military hardware in the region, there are concerns now that a ground invasion could be imminent.
His days are numbered. One goal is I want the people of Venezuela to be treated well.
Trump is talking about this man, Nicolas Maduro, Venezuela's president. He has remained defiant and is tonight holding a rally for his supporters. We'll bring you some of his comments live. But first, let's focus on the oil tanker seized off the Venezuelan coast. And let's bring in David Blevins. David, in Washington, is this making an impression in the news in America? It sounds like a significant escalation. How are Americans receiving the news that their president has ordered the seizure of an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela?
Well, yes, it would appear to be a significant escalation in US tactics. As we know, over the course of the last 4 months, they've targeted 23 boats, killing 87 people, always carefully framing that as an operation against drug traffickers, though never providing any evidence and therefore raising questions about international law. The seizure of an oil tanker is new territory. Why would they do that? Well, think back to March of this year. President Trump imposed a tariff of 25% on goods coming into the United States from any country purchasing oil from Venezuela. He seems determined to shut down the main source of revenue for the government of Nicolas Maduro. We don't know the name of the vessel that's been seized. We don't know which country's flag it was flying at the time, and we don't know where exactly the interception took place. We do know it was an operation led by the US Coast Guard. They are referring all questions about this matter to the White House, and this is what the president himself had to say about it just a few moments ago.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
Thank you. Can you explain a little more about this Venezuelan oil tanker and share a little more information?
Well, I'll let the people do it, but you see the result, and I guess they probably have released the pictures by now, or pretty soon. You'll discuss that with the appropriate people later on, but no, it was seized for a very good reason.
David, this is a president who campaigned in the election to end America's wars overseas, but we've seen a massive build-up of American military naval firepower in the coast off Venezuela. We've seen American fighter jets buzzing the airspace over Venezuela, and now this development. Does he look to you like an American president on the verge of something potentially much bigger with Venezuela?
I think that's a very real potential. The US presence in the region has certainly been building for months now. We're talking about at least a dozen warships, including the USS Gerald Ford. That's the largest warship in the world. We're talking about a nuclear submarine. There's also F-35 jets in the region, and somewhere in the region of 15 to 20,000 troops. Now, many observers would say this all points more towards an attempted regime change than anything to do with drug trafficking. And over the Thanksgiving weekend, a couple of weeks ago, President Trump fueled speculation that airstrikes on Venezuela could be imminent by posting online that he had closed the airspace above and around Venezuela. Now, since then, he's confirmed that he's had a conversation with President Maduro. He was reported to have offered him and his family safe passage out. Others might interpret that as an ultimatum to step down or face the consequences, and the seizure of an oil tanker today might be just the first of those consequences, Dom.
David Blemons, thank you very much. So events moving quickly on a number of fronts with Venezuela. We'll keep across those developments as they move tonight. But let's take you now to Oslo, where Venezuela's opposition leader is due to land in a few hours' time. She may have missed the official ceremony, but Maria Corina Machado's daughter collected the Peace Prize on her behalf. Here's our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle.
Maria Corina Machado is the Venezuelan opposition leader who's been living in hiding for the past 18 months after the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, refused to concede elections in 2024. She didn't make it to Oslo in time to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in person. Instead, her daughter, Anna, who she hasn't seen for almost 2 years, collected the award and delivered the speech her mother wrote.
She wants to live in a free Venezuela, and she will never give up on that purpose. That is why we all know, and I know, that she will be back in Venezuela very soon.
In the audience were other South American leaders here in solidarity, and Edmundo Gonzalez, the little-known diplomat who ran and won the presidency when Machado was banned, but is now living in exile.
This prize carries profound meaning. It reminds the world that democracy is essential to peace.
Machado spoke about the pain of families split up and her dream of seeing the millions of Venezuelans who fled one day return. Some of those had traveled to Oslo.
She really deserved this prize, and we are quite happy and proud about it. And I think it's a prize for democracy.
Machado is on her way to Norway now. Her journey out of Venezuela was dangerous. The details have been kept a secret. But she spoke to the Nobel Institute on the phone just before taking off.
As soon as I arrive, I will be able to embrace all my family and my children that I have not seen for 2 years, and so many Venezuelans, Norwegians that I know that share our struggle and our fight.
Machado's family, including her mother, are here in Oslo. When she lands in Norway, probably in the early hours of Thursday morning, she'll be finally reunited with them.
When you are faced with so much injustice, sometimes, you're naive and you think that the world is going to recognize what's going through. And you don't understand that you're facing a huge apparatus that's making propaganda to whitewash crimes.
Machado isn't the first Nobel laureate unable to attend, but her journey, which likely involved covert US help, is unprecedented.
In a way, the absence of Maria Corina Machado at the ceremony at the City Hall in Oslo just underlines the risks that she is taking in Venezuela. But equally, her determination to get here also reflects her determination to win that struggle for democracy in Venezuela.
Machado's presence in Oslo will be an embarrassment to President Nicolas Maduro at a time when Venezuela's leader finds himself caught between growing hostility at home and increasing antagonism abroad. US attacks on drug boats and a massive military presence in the region is raising the prospect of war. Maduro tried to prevent Maria Corina Machado from leaving Venezuela, but now that she has, he won't want her to return.
Well, as we said, the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, has been speaking at a rally in Caracas, the capital of Venezuela, as US threats mount. And he has mentioned his political opponent, Maria Corina Machado, who has won the Nobel Peace Prize. Let's have a listen to what he's had to say.
The people of Venezuela should applaud the people of Oslo for supporting peace in Venezuela. I also saw images of a march in Oslo protesting against covering the Nobel Peace Prize, tainting the Nobel Peace Prize with blood. The people of Oslo have spoken out against war in Venezuela, and the images of today are striking. The eyes of the world are looking at us. The eyes of the world are looking at Venezuela, supporting us, supporting the power of the people of Venezuela.
Well, live now to Alistair Bunkle in Oslo. Alistair, thanks for joining us. So we've got the Nobel Peace Prize winner on her way, if not about to arrive. We've got all her family there, and we have this extraordinary news from Venezuela that an oil tanker has been seized by the US Coast Guard. How is that news going down amongst Machado's family and supporters gathering there in Oslo?
Well, I was just looking just before we started talking, Dominic, at her flight tracking. She's about 2 hours out. Whether or not she, has Wi-Fi on board and is aware of the news that's coming out of the United States, I don't know. I guess she probably does. She's trodden a pretty kind of fine line with Donald Trump. I mean, don't forget, let's not forget that Donald Trump thought he should have been winning this Nobel Peace Prize this year, but he rang her and congratulated her. She's managed to always sort of keep him on side and thank him for the support that he's giving Venezuela without openly endorsing US military action. I think she would feel that she wants to achieve the overthrow of Maduro and the return of democracy in Venezuela through largely peaceful and non-violent means, but at the same time, clearly she's somewhat reliant on the United States. I think, as I said in my report, the US, perhaps the CIA, have had some hand in her leaving Venezuela to get here to Oslo. So it's a tricky balance for her. When it comes to Nicolas Maduro, I'm quite surprised that he was addressing her directly, or at least addressing her winning the Nobel Prize directly, rather than just trying to pretend it's not happening. I have to say, there have been very, very small protests against Machado, not in support of Maduro, but against Machado, and not really against Machado, more against Trump, more against war, more against NATO, rather than being, pro the Venezuelan leader at the moment. So, that is a distortion of what's happening here. There's been hundreds of Venezuelans who are now living abroad, unable or unwilling to return to Venezuela, who have come to Oslo for this moment, for the Peace Prize, to try and see Maria Corina Machado. And I have to say, from what we have witnessed over 2 or 3 days here, the support has been very much for her, both from expat Venezuelans, from Europeans, but also actually a number of South American leaders, including Javier Milei, the Argentinian president, I think the Panamanian president, the Ecuadorian president, were all here in Oslo in the audience today. I don't think they make it a regular annual occurrence to come to the Nobel Peace Prize. They are very much here to show some South American solidarity to her.
Alistair Bunkle in Oslo. We'll leave it there for now, but thanks very much for that update. So a ceremony in Oslo and a seizure off the coast of Venezuela. Our data and forensics correspondent, Tom Cheshire, has been looking at what President Trump could really be after in the region.
Is this what the beginning of a war between the US and Venezuela looks like? Now, this is a satellite image. It's quite hard to make out. What we're interested in is this grey smudge visible from space. Still quite hard to make out, even if we zoom in on it here. But what it is this, the USS Gerald R. Ford. This is the largest, most deadly aircraft carrier in the world. And it is not alone. This was pictured in the Atlantic last month, accompanied by other ships. They have been based in Europe. They've made this long journey all the way over the Atlantic to the Caribbean Sea. And it's part, really, of a flotilla of all sorts of different weapon systems available. This shows that build-up, so you can see this is in February. This is what is the usual presence in green. That really spikes from August onwards. We've got this really, really big build-up of a variety of ships. You've got guided missile destroyers, amphibious assault ships. And that's only the naval assets. Let's talk about the US Air Force as well. This is flight tracking data for a B-52 flight. You can see the flight path from North Dakota all the way down just off Venezuela. And we've seen several of those flights from different sorts of bombers over that period. Now, the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, told crowds in Venezuela that it had endured 22 weeks of aggression from the US and Donald Trump. Things could be about to get worse. So let's rewind those 22 weeks to understand how we got here. Now, September the 2nd, this is a video posted by the White House on X. They said that they had conducted a strike against so-called narco-terrorists shipping fentanyl to the US. They didn't provide direct evidence of that. And that was only the first strike. There have been plenty more since then, including right up to Friday. We verified strikes and counted them up. At least 23 boats have been targeted in 22 strikes, killing 87 people. You can see that is all around. There's Venezuela here, but it's also on the Pacific Ocean as well. Now, the US says it is because of drugs, and there has been some evidence to support that. The Dominican Republic said they'd recovered the contents of one boat hit by a US strike. They unveiled a huge haul of cocaine. Whatever the cargo, though, there are serious disputed legal issues. First of all, whether designating the boats as narco-terrorists makes them lawful military targets, or whether these are effectively extrajudicial murders of civilians at sea. And more specifically, well, let's go back to that very first video, the very first strike back in September. What this footage doesn't show is what came afterwards, an alleged second strike that killed survivors of the first. That has created deep controversy for US Secretary of War Pete Hegseth. Here he was talking about it earlier in the week.
A couple of hours later, I learned that that commander had made which he had the complete authority to do, and by the way, Admiral Bradley made the correct decision to ultimately sink the boat and eliminate the threat. He sunk the boat, and eliminated the threat. And it was the right call. We have his back, and the American people are safer because narco-terrorists know you can't bring drugs through the water and eventually on land if necessary to the American people.
But others have said this isn't about drugs at all. It's about oil. Venezuela has lots of it, the world's largest proven reserves. Speaking to the faithful on Fox News, Republican Congresswoman and Trump supporter Mariela Salazar said this.
He's understanding that we're about to go in. He understands that he has been our enemy for the last 25 years. Venezuela, for the American oil companies, will be a field day, because it will be more than $1 trillion in economic activity.
And that was echoed by Nicolas Maduro a few days later. He sent this letter to OPEC, which represents major oil-producing nations. And in that, he said that the US was trying to seize Venezuela's vast oil reserves, the largest on the planet, through lethal military force against the country's territory, people, and institutions. Lethal military force. And that's an understatement when you think of the armada that is lying in wait. And President Trump has himself said that he is prepared to go further.
And we're going to start doing those strikes on land, too. You know, the land is much easier. It's much easier. And we know the routes they take. We know everything about them. We know where they live. We know where the bad ones live. And we're going to start that very soon, too.
President Maduro has complained of 22 weeks of aggression. There may be much more to come.
Well, what is going on and what could happen next? Joining me now, Jeffrey Korn, Director of the Centre for Military Law at Texas Tech University, formerly a senior advisor to the US Army on warfare law, and in Washington, Ambassador Todd Robinson, a former Assistant US Secretary for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs under Joe Biden. So a legal expert and a diplomat. First of all, if we could go to you, Ambassador Robinson. I mean, this looks like an escalation, seizing an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela. How big an escalation do you think it is?
Well, I think we should take a step back. I'm not so sure it's an escalation. As you'll recall, part of the reason, I'm sure we'll get into this, part of the reason we are where we are now is because there's very real doubt about the use of the military in the Caribbean and the way it's been used in the Caribbean. I think this is actually could be seen as a step back. All reports are this was a Coast Guard action that puts this back into, civilian law enforcement where it should be, I think, and it really gives everybody a little bit time to breathe and take a step back.
Is that how the Venezuelans are going to see it? Do you think Maduro is going to see one of his oil tankers being seized by the Americans after a massive military build-up? Is that not going to be of great concern to him? Well,
let's be clear. I think all of the actions the United States government has taken up till now are going to give pause for thought to the Maduro regime. I think this action in particular shows uncharacteristic finesse by the Trump administration, which is known for sort of black and white action. This action will make people around Maduro think twice. It avoids what the president talked about earlier, which is putting troops on the ground. It allows for some diplomatic space, possibly in the region and internationally, and as I mentioned earlier, it moves the action back to civilian law enforcement rather than military. So I think this is actually a sign that perhaps some professionals are back in the room.
Jeffrey Korn, do you agree with that analysis? Is this actually sort of stepping back? And also, asking you as a lawyer, how much are they going to be worried about the legal implications of what they're doing, seizing a tanker? And how legal would some kind of land invasion or land incursion, how legal would that be for the Trump administration as things stand?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. And I wish I could be as optimistic as the ambassador. I hope he's right. But I don't think the administration has ever seen these operations as binary. I think the Coast Guard has continued to do maritime interdiction operations at the same time we've been conducting this campaign against drug boats as targets of opportunity, if you will. So I don't think that this necessarily indicates a movement back to an exclusive law enforcement type legal approach to dealing with what the administration calls a drug problem. In terms of your other question, notice that the president talked about going after them on the land, referring to members of the drug cartels ostensibly. And this is connected to the overall U.S. position, which I think is deeply flawed, that this is an action of national self-defense against an organized armed group that's launching attacks on the United States, analogizing Tren de Aragua to Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Again, I think that is a false analogy. I think this, as the ambassador notes, belongs in the law enforcement realm. But by characterizing this as an armed conflict against a non-state group, what the president is signaling is that the United States is very likely to invoke a doctrine called unable or unwilling, that Venezuela is unable or unwilling to prevent the use of its territory by this group that's engaged in hostilities against the United States, and therefore we claim the right to act unilaterally against that group in their territory. And that could very easily provide the pretext for some confrontation between Venezuelan armed forces and U.S. armed forces. And then that would open the door to a broader campaign to basically negate the power of the Venezuelan military.
Ambassador Robinson, your sort of thoughts now about the diplomatic implications of this. You've got an American president saying that Maduro's days are numbered. Now he's said that, does he need to follow through on that? And do you expect him to do so?
Well, I suspect people are urging him to follow through on that. I think there are probably members of the opposition, in fact, that are urging him to do this. But I really think, from my point of view, they need to take a step back. They need to, in fact, further analyze these legal ramifications that have been raised by the professor. I think he's absolutely right. And again, my hope is, and this recent action to stop this oil tanker, my hope is that they, in fact, are actually thinking this way and looking at ways to reconsider their strategy. This tactic. I'm sorry.
Just to ask you, you were based in Caracas, I think, for 6 months from December 2017 to May 2018. So you had time then to observe and get the measure of Nicolás Maduro. What do you think he's going to be thinking at the moment? And how's he going to be responding to this? He's a great survivor, isn't he? Is he going to feel, though, that the pressure's on him and his days might well be numbered?
Yeah, I mean, I think he absolutely feels that the pressure is on him. But let's not forget, he's been thinking about the pressure being on him for quite a while. The international community has already, on a number of occasions, come out against him. This award for Maria Corina Machado is just another effort by the international community to signal that change has to come. So yes, they're ratcheting up the pressure, but he's been feeling pressure for a while.
There is a sense of momentum, though, building towards something, isn't there? Let me ask you, both of you, what's going to happen next, do you think? First of all, Geoffrey Corn, are we heading inexorably, do you think, towards some kind of greater involvement by the Americans? And what do you think that is most likely to look like?
Well, it's interesting. The lead-in talked about the uproar over this boat attack and what's being called the double tap or a second strike. And I'm concerned that the administration is looking at this kind of as, no pun intended, testing the water with Congress. How likely is it that Congress is going to step up and challenge the asserted authority of a president to essentially start a war? And it doesn't look like there's too much concern by the administration that they're going to be checked by Congress. I suspect the next move is going to be targeting alleged Tren de la Agua facilities and personnel inside Venezuela itself, and basically baiting the Venezuelan government and military to challenge U.S. forces. And if they do that, then it will open the door to a broader conflict, and the argument will be it's a legitimate assertion of self-defense, which I think is invalid.
Thank you. And Ambassador, what do you think? What's this going to look like, do you think, if that's correct? Are we going to see airstrikes, special forces, drone activity? What kind of activity are you expecting?
Well, I joined the professor in hoping that, in fact, Congress does step up. I think it would be a major mistake to go down this path. The idea that this is going to be an easy operation, despite all of or notwithstanding all of the military materiel in the region, this is not going to be easy. Venezuela is a large country, and right now, because our embassy has been closed for so long, we just don't have a lot of intel on the ground about what's happening. I think this is going to be a lot more difficult than people might imagine if it happens.
Thank you so much, both of you, Geoffrey Corn and Ambassador Todd Robinson. Great to get your insights as we peer into what's going on in Venezuela, look at what's happening in Oslo, and wonder what's going to happen next. Thanks for joining us. While you're watching The World with me, Dominic Waghorn, still to come, I'll speak to the human rights lawyer who says Ukrainian children taken by Russia have been sent to North Korea.
If you have a picture in your head of how the global economy works, it probably looks a bit like this. Container ships, ports, goods transported around the world. This is globalization. The heartbeat of commerce around us. The invisible force keeping us supplied with essentials and trinkets. So what happens when you try to turn this world upside down? This is the inside story of how the world economy really works and what's really happening at the front line of Donald Trump's trade war.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond. You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back. Well, Russia is accused of a string of war crimes in Ukraine, none graver than the abduction and trafficking of thousands of children. Now, it's claimed Russia has sent some of them to North Korea. Ukraine's Regional Centre for Human Rights estimates that at least 19,500 children have been taken by Russia, mostly forced into re-education. This includes being banned from speaking Ukrainian and taught falsehoods about their homeland. The NGO says the children are in 164 camps in occupied parts of Ukraine, as well as Russia and Belarus, and it says one camp is in North Korea. Ukraine's foreign ministry says only 1,850 children have been returned by Russia so far. Russia, for its part, denies abducting children, claiming it has evacuated them from war zones for their protection. Well, 3 years ago, I visited a village in southern Ukraine where the director of an orphanage had called for locals to hide their children in his care before the Russians arrived to take them. It turned out his fears were well-founded. These are CCTV pictures showing Russian soldiers searching the building for children. 15 orphans were later found by the Russians and taken to Crimea before managing to escape to Georgia. Well, I've been speaking to Katerina Rejevska, a lawyer with Ukraine's Regional Centre for Human Rights. She testified before the US Senate on child abductions. I began by asking her what points she wanted to get across to American politicians.
So during these hearings in the Senate, I was trying to explain in general the legal aspects of the unlawful deportation and forcible transfer of Ukrainian children, and regarding the fact that this physical displacement is not the goal itself. So Russians just trying to geographically change the position of these children. They're trying to turn them into enemies of their proper nation. And that is why now, since 2023, they are not only deporting Ukrainian children, but also indoctrinating them, Russifying them, militarizing them in the network of special institutions, re-education camps in Russia, in occupied territories in Belarus, and in this one camp, Sondowon, in North Korea.
Sorry, just to interrupt you. So some of the most startling testimony you gave was the fact that some of these children are going all the way from Ukraine into Russia and then all the way to North Korea. Why is that happening? Because I think a lot of what we've been told was that these children are, as you say, they're trying to indoctrinate them, turn them into Russians. That can't happen in North Korea. Why are they going there?
In this case, Russians are using Ukrainian children as well as Russian kids as agents of their proper propaganda, as a so-called Russian ambassador to the North Korea. And in this framework of the strategic partnership between the Russian Federation and the North Korea, they are just organizing these types of trips like cultural exchanges. But here the fact is that, first of all, Ukrainian children are not Russian ambassadors and should not be turned into like the agents of the Russian propaganda narratives. Secondly, the North Korea is also participating in the crime of aggression of the Russian agents, and that is why to send Ukrainian children to this enemy state, it is also very cynically and should be highlighted. And third, thing it is that in this camp there is a high level of hatred speech and also of indoctrination. Children are taught to just hate all the other states than the Russian Federation and North Korea. And of course, it doesn't correspond to obligations of the Russian Federation under the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child.
So we went to Mykolaiv, we went to an orphanage in a village called Stepanivka about a year into the war, and we went to an orphanage and we were given CCTV footage when I was reporting there of Russian soldiers going through the orphanage looking for children. And there's been some sort of evidence of that. We've seen some sort of visual evidence of what the Russians were doing. But actually, a lot of this has sort of been happening away from the cameras, hasn't it? And I think the figure you're saying is 19,000 children have been illegally deported. And yet this doesn't really seem to figure in any of the peace plans. How big a problem that is that for you, would you say? I mean, how much of this is being sort of just left out of the diplomacy at the moment?
At the beginning of my testimonies, I have highlighted that previously in March this year, the return of Ukrainian abducted children was seen as a confidence-building measure between two parties before any peace agreement. Children are not negotiable, and that is why we should return them unconditionally and without further delay, and of course under international independent mechanism. But the Russian Federation failed to respect all obligations under international humanitarian law, and mostly children abducted since 2014, they remain under Russian control. That is why we need, as for today, the good services of Melania Trump, the First Lady of the United States. Also, we need this mediation from the side of Qatar, of Vatican. And the same day when these hearings have taken place, we also had a voting for the resolution of the United Nations General Assembly regarding the process of the return of Ukrainian children from the Russian control. Why I am so sad with everything happening now in the context of these peace negotiations, it is because children in occupation, they are totally forgotten. And we are talking about more than 1.5 million Ukrainian children under Russian control, who unfortunately still be indoctrinated and militarized by the Russian Federation without any consequences for this state. We don't see any provisions in this 28 points plan regarding their status, and we all understand that the Russian Federation doesn't respect international humanitarian law towards these children. It means that these kids cannot be raised as Ukrainians. They will be raised inevitably as Russian patriots. It means that they will be raised as enemies of Ukraine.
So your fear is they're overlooked and they're forgotten. As you say, the First Lady, Melania Trump, has sort of weighed in on the issue, but she said she was reassured by what Putin said to her in response to her letter to him. Do you think she was rather naive in that reaction to what the Russian president said to her?
She is not naive, but we also should understand that these good services of Melania Trump, we were able to return only 14 children. They are not romantic, they are not naive, but unfortunately they are very often manipulated by the Putin regime, which is just trying to legitimize their previous crimes using these high-ranking officials and demonstrating that, there was no deportation, this was also the separation of children with their families because of war. But the fact is that Russians are selecting cases who to return and who not to return. And of course, they are not willing to return witnesses of their crimes.
Well, the British soldier killed in what's being described as a tragic accident in Ukraine has been named as Lance Corporal George Hooley. The 28-year-old paratrooper was killed while watching Ukrainian forces test new defensive capabilities. Paying tribute to him during Prime Minister's questions to Keir Starmer, said Lance Corporal Hooley served with honour and distinction. The presence of British paratroopers in Ukraine had previously not been disclosed by the government. This is The World. Next up tonight, Iceland joins the Eurovision boycott in protest against Israel's participation.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist. Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Welcome back. Iceland has become the latest country to boycott next year's Eurovision Song Contest, joining what is still a small but significant walkout over Israel's participation. Ireland and Spain are two of the biggest names on the boycott list. They'd already been joined by Slovenia. The Netherlands also withdrew last week, and today Iceland became the fifth to pull out of the contest, which turns 17th next year. Well, let's bring in our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer. Katie, thanks for joining us. If it carries on at this rate, you kind of wonder who's going to be left to compete with Israel.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's very significant that yet again we've got another country walking away from the competition tonight. Today was, in fact, the last day for countries to tell organisers whether they were in or out. From today onwards, if any other countries want to leave, they will incur a financial penalty. But yeah, as you say, after Ireland, Spain, Slovenia and the Netherlands made this grand exit last week, all connected with Israel's inclusion, today we had Iceland. We knew that Iceland's board of the broadcaster RUV were meeting to discuss what they were going to do, but they put out this statement after that meeting, effectively saying that while the contest itself is seen as apolitical, within their country they felt that it would be very political and very divisive should they had gone ahead. And Stefan Eriksson, their Director General, put out a statement saying there is no peace or joy connected to this contest as things stand. Now, on that basis, first and foremost, we are stepping back while the situation is as it is. We've had an update from the organisers, the EBU, tonight, saying they look forward to welcoming around 35 broadcasters, they say, in May. To give you an idea, it was 43 countries that took part at the contest earlier this year. They'll confirm the exact numbers, though, they say, early at the start of next week, so we'll find out exactly who's in and who's out next week.
Katie, thanks for the update. Now, what do you think of these two fonts? America's most senior diplomat, Marco Rubio, has directed his State Department to go back to using Times New Roman as the standard for official papers. That is the top one there. Apparently, the change is to align with President Trump's One Voice for America's Foreign Relations Directive. The move reverses the Biden administration's update to using Calibri. That's the one at the bottom there. Because it was believed by disability groups to be more accessible. It's good to see they're focusing on the important stuff. This is The World with me, Dominic Waghorn. Next up, how these Afghan men dressed up in Peaky Blinders outfits found themselves on the wrong side of morality police.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
What might happen if Russia attacked the UK?
This is clearly an enormous show of force.
It is definitely out of the ordinary.
We ran a war game with former ministers back in the hot seat.
Ben Wallace.
Amber Rudd.
Jack Straw.
It's the kind of war game that's genuinely tested inside government.
The Russians are signalling that there may be an attack.
Russia knows our weaknesses, but do you? I'm Deborah Haynes. From Sky News and Tortoise, this is The War Game. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to.
Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you.
So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Richard Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist. A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Welcome back. A day into Australia's world-first social media ban for under-16s, many have been speaking to Sky News about how they'll get around it. Still, governments here and around the world are watching what is the most sweeping attempt ever seen to try and stamp out bullying and online addiction among young people. Sky's Nicole Johnston has this report from Sydney.
It will be a different kind of summer for these Australian kids. The government has banned children under 16 from some of the most popular social media apps. But they're already finding ways around it.
It feels pretty weird because I just communicate with my friends online and I don't really do anything bad, so I don't know why they're banning every person that's under 16.
There's ways to get around it, and they could have gotten around it a better way. Like, they should have put restrictions, like you can't post and you can't comment or subscribe.
I know people are using VPNs, using their dad's photos and other measures to get around it.
Do you think that this ban will fail?
It will fail.
Parents are also adjusting and hoping there'll be fewer battles at home about screen time.
It'll empower parents, I think, to send their kids outside a bit more and say, no, get off your devices, and not let them, have social media accounts to start with.
I think this is a step in the right direction. Limiting access to the platforms is good because I think parents are under peer pressure as well. If all of your kids' friends are on social media, it's really hard to be the one to say no.
The jury's out. I have concerns over those that are maybe less technically savvy than others, so some will get away around it, and it's actually going to widen the gap.
The Australian government claims it's taken on the tech giants and won.
This reform will change lives for Australian kids and allowing them to just have their childhood. For Australian parents, enabling them to have greater peace of mind.
Under the law, the responsibility shifts from the parents to big tech companies. They have to prove they're taking reasonable steps to keep kids off their apps or face fines of up to £30 million. But critics say it's up to parents to control their kids on social media, not the government.
Parents have got to understand in today's age, online social media supervision is the paramount obligation of a parent. We've got to it's the parents and the schools. We do not want the government to do this because they'll make it worse.
The world is watching Australia's kids and wondering if its new law can keep them offline. Nicole Johnston, Sky News, Sydney.
Now, just enough time to show you these images out of Afghanistan. 4 Afghan men have been reprimanded by the Taliban for dressing like characters from the TV series Peaky Blinders, the group all in their early 20s, were arrested in the Herat province in western Afghanistan. The friends were told that their clothing was in conflict with Afghan and Islamic values, and that the values in Peaky Blinders went against Afghan culture. Videos have attracted hundreds of thousands of views on social media platforms. They show the men walking around their township imitating the characters from the show, which is set in Birmingham, not Afghanistan, during the Second World War. A Taliban spokesman said in a statement, there we are, a programme for their correction has begun. We have our own region, culture and values. Makes you wonder what they mean by correction. That's it from me and the World team for tonight. We'll be watching developments in Venezuela with much of the US Navy off the coast, with the airspace over Venezuela being menaced by American jets, and tonight, the seizure of a Venezuelan oil tanker by the US Coast Guard. Meanwhile, ceremony in Oslo, where Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, is due to arrive soon. So an extraordinary situation in Oslo, but also in Venezuela, as we wait to see how events unfold. We will be back tomorrow with more foreign news on the world at 9. Stay with Sky News now if you can. My colleague Anna Botting is next with news at 10. But that's enough from here tonight on the world. More tomorrow night at 9.